was a Navy IT specialist back in 2006. And after he was discharged, 2 years later, I was homeless. Standing in a line in Gainesville, Florida, twisted around the block so I could donate blood in exchange for $20. Many of the men waiting with me looked almost as bad as I did. My hair was matted, crusted from dandruff, eyes bloodshot, fingers tingled because of withdrawal from the anti-anxiety medications I wasn't getting from the VA. Between childhood trauma and my 4 years in the service, I relied on medications such as clonazepam for anxiety, Zoloft for PTSD, but the VA delivered my medication through the mail, and I hadn't had a stable home for some time. I was couch surfing, car snoozing, sleeping in the back of the restaurant where I worked. With no permanent address, my meds never found me. On a single night in January of 2020, 37,252 veterans were victims of homelessness, and the VA processes about 80% of veteran prescriptions by mail. So when a veteran loses their home, they often lose access to the medication their life depends on. And it's interesting because it sort of speaks to something Michael Schellenberger, writes a lot about environmental issues, but not exclusively. And others have noted that homelessness is not a housing issue so much as it is a mental health issue.
Yep.
And this veteran, Alex Miller, is sort of speaking to that. So it's definitely worth celebrating the service of the men and women in the armed forces on this day, past and present, but also addressing some of the challenges that veterans face, to whom we as a nation are owed a duty, at least if we want to remain a free people. For more on this topic on this Veterans Day, pleased to be joined by Dr. Tony Brooks, who's a former member of the elite 75th Army Ranger Regiment, an internationally recognized doctor of chiropractic medicine. He is also the author of Leave No Man Behind, The Untold Story of the Rangers' Unrelenting Search for Marcus Luttrell, the Navy SEAL lone survivor in Afghanistan. Tony Brooks, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me this morning.
So, maybe just start there. I mean, in terms of, the people with whom you served and who you know in military ranks past and present, and, this issue of PTSD, the mental health of our veterans, and the dire turns mental health issues take on many veterans.
Yeah, let me just first start by saying that, I still am associated with people that are currently serving, people that have served 20 plus years in the military, as well as people that left service similar to what I did to do other things. And in conversations with many of them, not all, but many, it's been a very, very rough year for multiple reasons. One, the coronavirus lockdowns and the subsequent, loss of freedoms, as they will tell me, in combination with Afghanistan falling and the monthly, if not weekly, reminder of all of the men that we served with that did not come home from combat, either in Iraq or Afghanistan. So it's been a very dark year for veterans. One theme that I keep, yes.
No, I'm sorry. Go on. One thing, what?
I would say one theme that I keep hearing is that it just keeps getting worse. So I'll leave it with that, but we can expand on that here shortly.
Well, how do you think it affected veterans? When on the exit, on the way out, 13 of your brothers and sisters were murdered.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a tipping point for a lot of people that, and I heard this over and over, the government does not care about us. And then I keep hearing even more that Americans don't care about us. I was talking with a veteran actually 2 days ago, and he said, if things ever get bad again, you will not see me fighting. And I think that was, I was a 25-year retired Army Ranger, Delta Force operator, saying that to me. And that was heartbreaking.
Well, we've heard from
the most elite warrior on the planet.
We've heard from our friend Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano on the topic, and others who really point, in terms of the challenges at present, point to the senior leadership of the armed services, and frankly, just how much they've fallen down on the job, how much division they've created when their job is unit cohesion, whether it is on the politics around race, critical theory scholarship and race, or whether it's the decision making in theaters of war like Afghanistan. It just doesn't seem like there's. I know a friend of mine who has a son at West Point, and if he could get out, he would. And you hear this again and again, whether it's the vax mandates, it's this sort of politicization I was just referencing. There just seems to be a focus on everything other than what the point of the armed services is.
Yeah, that's a big factor right now, is that leadership is not trusted and not respected at this point. They respect the man and the men that hold the positions, but they're not respecting the job that they're doing currently. And it's tough to come to the conclusion that I'm trying to become a warfighter here. So someone at West Point, for example, and it seems like I'm becoming a culture warrior more than anything. And that's another topic that can.
Well, right,
really,
and this is against the backdrop of some very real threats identified by that same senior leadership. I mean, again, I go back to Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Milley saying the testing of those hypersonic missiles in China, he called that a game changer. So this is where focus needs to be on the job that the armed services is tasked to do in an all-volunteer armed services, and you're driving people who want to serve out, and those that are essentially serving out their terms, if you will, are making comments like you were just relaying.
Yeah, it's been pretty. The morale in the military is the lowest I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I talked to generals who I served with. They're much lower rank when I was in with them, and they say it's not the military, and it's not the military I love.
Well, what if anything could change it? Change the morale, change the culture.
I think it's clearly a leadership problem at this point. You put in new leaders and things can change rapidly.
It's remarkable.
And they need to heal.
It's remarkable how fast this can go downhill, too. I mean, per your book, we were celebrating and expressing our gratitude for the service of military men and women in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we had these wildly successful movies. The one about Marcus Luttrell, who's a Medal of Honor recipient, lone survivor. The one about why am I blanking on his name? American Sniper, Chris Kyle, and that's a decade ago, and now here we are.
Yeah, and no one really wants to talk about Afghanistan. It's been a very tricky conversation over the past month and a half or so. That we've quickly moved on to other things. We fought war for 20 years and we let it go away in 1 month. I think that's what a lot of veterans are struggling with.
Well,
we fought the war in the shadows,
yeah.
and now it's gone.
Tell us the impetus for your book and your angle here, because of course Marcus Luttrell is well known because of that lone survivor movie, and where you're coming at. Remind us about the heroic service of our armed servicemen.
Yeah, there were a couple of reasons why I wrote my book, and one of the main reasons was all the men that I served with on that mission. There were hundreds of us. All of us felt like our story has never been told over the years. The movie The Lone Survivor came out. It did very well. The book did very well. But no one ever talked about the actual rescue operation. So a lot of people have struggled over the years with holding on to this story, telling no one, because that's the honorable thing to do, is to keep it to yourself. At least that's what we were told. And for me, it was a struggle almost all the time when people would talk about that mission, and I would kind of just bite my tongue and not talk about it. Well, I think for most veterans, it's much healthier to get your story out. It's much healthier to let your friends and family know what you've done in your life. Because if you hold on to it, it's just going to brew and brew and brew, and frankly, you'll take that story to your grave. And no one will ever know the history behind what happened out there on the battlefield. So that's why I wrote my book.
Well, give us, I mean, without giving it all away. Obviously, we'll tell people to go buy the book and read all the details. But give us sort of a key takeaway or two from that rescue mission.
I'd say, without a shadow of a doubt, it's one of two things. One is the power of teamwork and the power of groupthink, having mission before men. It's very powerful when you are accomplishing something individually, and I would just talk from my perspective, something that I wouldn't be able to do without the group of men I had around me. I can't tell you how many times on that mission where my brain was telling me that, yep, this is it. This is as far as we can go. I don't know if we can go any more. And then I looked at my guys on my right and left, and they propel me forward. So we always talk about groupthink and all the negative impacts of it, peer pressure, bullying, all that, but we never talk about the power of groupthink to move mountains and to rescue fellow humans. That's the big takeaway from my book.
Is Marcus Luttrell a part of this in terms of did he want this story about the Rangers' search for him also told? Does he want this public?
I have multiple times reached out to Marcus, and I have not heard anything back, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, fair enough. And the guys that you fought with and did this mission with, you stay in touch with, what's their status? How are they doing?
Yeah, most of them are, in new careers, doing new things. Some of them are struggling with multiple reasons for being at war for 10 years or longer for some of them. But what's been very powerful from my book is reconnecting with all of those men. And every single one of them has reached out to me and thanked me. And that was probably the most powerful thing that I was not expecting about writing my story, because they read it and it was their story too.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's a bond that I can't even conceive of. So I'm anxious to read the book. He is Dr. Tony Brooks, former member of the elite 75th Army Ranger Regiment, internationally recognized doctor of chiropractic medicine, and the book, Leave No Man Behind, The Untold Story of the Rangers' Unrelenting Search for Marcus Luttrell, the Navy SEAL lone survivor in Afghanistan. Tony Brooks, thanks so much for joining us. Again, good luck with the book. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. God bless America.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
I actually started on Balance